Viktor is the heir of a large dukedom and from a noble family. However, one day a witch cursed him to never know the warmth of another, as when he touches someone with his hands they will die. It doesn't matter what he touches, so even plants and animals can die as well. His family and all his servants abandon him to a faraway mansion, except for his maid Alice and the butler Rob, who always teases him when she serves him. Viktor is determined to find a way to break the witch's curse so that he can finally see his family again. Later, when he has lunch in bed, Alice seems to be fascinated to watch him eat, and he is uncomfortable because everyone usually avoids him when he's eating. She later brings news that his childhood friend Philip would like to visit, and she prepares him something to wear while teasing him. Viktor is nervous to meet Philip because Philip was one of the few friends who didn't abandon him when he was cursed by the witch. But when his friend visits, Philip's servants make the two keep their distance from one another. The meeting is uncomfortable, and it seems that Philip is not happy to be visiting. And later Viktor catches Philip trying to ask Alice to leave the mansion. He then calls Viktor a monster and reveals that he was sent by Viktor's family to see if the heir was still alive. A depressed Viktor feels like he will never have a normal life again. But in the garden, Alice encourages him to keep trying to break the curse, and Viktor hopes one day to give her a ring. Rob has recovered from his back injury, so he returns to the mansion to help Alice take care of Viktor. Viktor is amazed Rob is still active in his old age, and the butler has been like a father to the heir ever since the curse began. Later they realize that Rob might be feeling the effects of old age as he is starting to lose his eyesight and his back starts to fail again. Because Viktor can't leave the mansion and risk accidentally killing someone, he is determined to make a living playing and composing music. So since he was little, he has always been very good at the piano. When he is practicing, Alice comes to visit and he finds her too distracting. She later listens to him play, and he admits that he composed a ballad for her inspired by their time in the garden. Meanwhile, Viktor's sister Viola has been uncomfortable with the treatment of her brother, so she decides to go visit him. His sister often has to act composed, so it's relaxing for her to visit him. She also teases him about his obvious crush on Alice. Before she leaves, tells him to hurry up and break the curse so that he can return to the main mansion. Later, a cat sneaks into the mansion and chases Viktor, who is afraid of accidentally touching it. They determine the cat was abandoned, and Viktor decides to keep it because it reminds him of himself. And that night Alice dances with him. The next day they play billiards together and the loser owes a favor to the winner. Alice manages to win and she uses her favor to ask him to go into town for a festival. Viktor rarely leaves his mansion but agrees, and Alice gives him a plague doctor costume to hide his identity. Later they get separated and Alice is confronted by a person who calls her Sharon, who is Alice's mother. Meanwhile, Viktor finds a lost child, so he plays the child piano music to cheer him up. He plays so well that the town converges and dances along with the music. When Alice finds him later, he wants to continue to have fun and she's surprised he is enjoying the outing so much. At the festival, they discover rumors of him have spread throughout the town and the masks are inspired by his curse. At the clock tower, Alice tells him of a fairy tale of two lovers separated by the moon. That night they spend time together and go watch a meteor shower together. But when Viktor loses his hat, he can't help Alice for risk of touching her. She then teases him and dumps him in the water. The next day, Viktor notices that Alice has stopped teasing him, and he is worried that he has upset her in some way. They discover that Alice is sick from peeping from his window, and Viktor makes her rest. When winter arrives, they have fun in the snow with Rob and have a snowball fight together. But during their fun, Alice has lost her mother's earring. Viktor overhears, and at night he tries to find the earring himself, but the snow overcomes him and he collapses. He is later approached by a mysterious person who tells him to stop and wait for spring. She later finds the earring for him and introduces herself as the witch Cuff. Cuff can't break the curse on Viktor, but he decides to introduce her to Alice as thanks for helping him. Cuff has been separated from her friend and is lost. She is also on the run from radical groups that hunt down witches. Cuff is also hated by witches because she is half human and half witch, and that night she leaves. Later in the snow, Alice remembers playing with Viktor in the snow when they were children. Viola comes for a visit to have tea with her brother. When Alice arrives, she teases the maid and tells her she lacks cute charm. So Viola decides to train Alice in how to act cute. Rob arrives and Viola has trouble speaking to him because she admires him. Viola then stays to help them make dinner, and Rob makes surprisingly cute pastries. Viola wishes that one day they can all cook together at the main mansion with the rest of the family, and they give her pastries as a goodbye gift. Once the lake freezes over, they go ice skating. And while watching her, Viktor meets a speaking bird who happens to be Cuff's friend Zane. Zane can't help but flirt at Alice. Zane is looking for Cuffs, and it turns out Alice had her because she had fallen into the lake. Cuff decides to learn how to ice skate but has trouble, and Zane mocks her that she is the total opposite of the gentle Alice. They all have fun skating together until it starts to snow, and Cuff tells them at the next blood moon they will take Alice and Viktor to the witches' gathering to see if they can find a cure for the curse. That night, Viola visits Alice for a sleepover and they talk about their respective crushes. Before she goes to sleep, Viola tells Alice she always wanted a big sister. Viktor wants to read in the observatory, but it is too overgrown due to disuse. They decide to clean it up and Viktor helps by killing the overgrown plants. As they clean, Viktor gives Alice a crown of dried flowers, and he awaits the day his curse is lifted so he can be with his family again. That night they have to chase the cat because she has stolen Alice's gown, and they determine the cat will have kittens soon and is building a nest. It is also the night of the blood moon, so Cuff and Zane arrive to take them to the witches' sabbath. They warn them to keep their identities as humans a secret from the other witches, and they will be disguised as Zane's sibling. At the witches' gathering, Viktor is surprised to see the monstrous forms of the witches. The witches take attendance, but Cuff can't stick to the plan and calls Viktor and Alice her kids. The gathering turns out to be boring, but when it ends, witches confront Viktor because he is associating himself with the half-human witch Cuff. Meanwhile, the leader Daleth speaks to Alice, who she recognizes from the town festival. Daleth also knows the witch that cast the curse on Viktor, but reveals that the witch is already dead and Daleth doesn't know how to break the curse. She reveals their identities and the witches chase them when they are forced to retreat. Zane and Cuff cover their escape, and though their reputations are ruined, they promise to stay friends, since they were not able to find a cure at the witches' gathering. Alice buys a witch's pot and a book of recipes from town to see if they can come up with a cure. They try a recipe and Viktor is shocked when the magic pot starts to speak. They try making a potion that removes witches' curses, but when Viktor drinks it, the potion doesn't work. Since they don't know what to do with the pot, they decide to give it to Rob. They later try to play a song composed by the legendary pianist McFarlane, which has a rumor that playing the song perfectly will cure any curse. And the ghost of McFarlane appears and mocks Viktor because nobody can play his song perfectly. Viktor tries to play the ghost and Alice tries to distract him, but Viktor concentrates and manages to play the song perfectly. But all it does is free McFarlane's ghost. They later accidentally break a vase and run away from Rob because the flower pot was over 50 years old. As they hide from the butler, Alice teases him constantly, and when they hide under the bed together, he confesses he enjoys spending time alone with her. Rob finds them and reveals that he recovered some jewels from the flower pot that must have been stolen from a thief long ago. Cuff arrives for a visit to learn how to read or write because she wants to impress Zane. She reveals Zane is working at the circus to hide his identity as a witch. Meanwhile, Walter, Viktor's younger brother, tells Viola to stop visiting Viktor. Walter hates Viktor and hopes to one day be the head of the family, but Walter still keeps Viola's secret that she is visiting Viktor. Viola arrives unannounced and finds Cuff alone in the mansion. Thinking the witch is an intruder, Viola tries to tackle Cuff, but the witch thinks they are just playing. Viktor and Alice later arrive and introduce Viola to Cuff. Over a game of chess with Viktor, Alice remembers the first time she came to the mansion. Alice had not seen Viktor since he was little, and at that time Viktor was depressed and traumatized because he was left alone all the time. Viktor didn't have a good reaction at their first meeting and acted cruel to Alice when she first came to the mansion, ordering her to clean up his messy room without Rob's help. When she cleans his room without complaining, Viktor cries and apologizes for acting out. And that night, in a depressed state, Viktor goes out into the cold wondering if he will ever have a friend. And he is rescued by Alice, who tells him his friendship with her when they were little saved her life. It is soon Christmas time at the mansion, and Alice informs Viktor that Cuff and Zane will be visiting the mansion for the party. Meanwhile, at the main mansion, Viola and Viktor's mother suspects Viola of visiting her brother and orders her to spend time with her family this Christmas at the main mansion. She disobeys to take a present to Rob, and Walter follows her by pretending to be her carriage driver. At Viktor's, Zane and Cuff arrive with a Christmas tree and they have a wonderful time setting up the tree, although Cuff accidentally falls asleep standing. That night, Viola arrives in the mansion and Walter sneaks in but is forced to wear a Santa costume to hide his identity. He runs into Cuff, who believes he is Santa, and is forced into the chimney by her. Walter arrives from the chimney and calls himself Viktor's rival, but everyone is confused because he is still wearing the Santa suit. Walter states his intention to become the head of the family, and he challenges Viktor to find the source of the curse, and the brother who uncovers a solution will be the head of the family. After Walter leaves, the rest of them have a Christmas party. Alice remembers her childhood at the mansion with her mother Sharon, where she met Rob and expressed her wish to become a good maid. Meanwhile, Viola is worried that her mother has noticed her and Walter escaping the mansion during Christmas, so she goes to Viktor's. There she advises Zane to stop hovering over Cuff and let her experience the world. Zane watches Cuff shop from afar, but he sees she is capable of taking care of herself. That night, Viktor cannot sleep, so Alice decides to stay in bed alongside him, which makes him nervous. They talk about his mother and Viktor doesn't remember much about her. and he tells Alice that if the family won't approve of his love for Alice, he will break ties with them. Meanwhile, Rob remembers when Viktor was banished from the mansion. The old butler could not connect with the young heir and had to find a friend his age, eventually finding Alice, who was being mistreated by her aunt. And although the old butler is worried for the future, he believes the two of them will be happy eventually. And that night, Rob listens outside the piano room as Viktor plays a song while Alice sings. Viola and Walter search through the main mansion for any clues about Viktor's curse, and one day they find a servant's logbook. Viola goes to visit Viktor because her mother wants her to grow up and become a noble lady. She starts teasing her brother that she will run away to avoid being a noble. And that night, Viola has tea with Alice and Cuff, showing them the servant's logbook that had Alice's mother's notes. Daleth later approaches Zane to give him a message to the rest of the group. And when Alice stumbles upon some notes that suggest witches had visited the mansion, Zane tells them that Daleth wishes to be friends with them. However, Zane is being blackmailed by Daleth to steal the logbook. Before he can burn it, Viktor catches him, but the heir agrees to burn the logbook to keep Cuff safe. Zane also reveals that Daleth uses various animals to spy on them, but he enacts a plan to hide a scrap of the logbook to try to trick Daleth into thinking they destroyed it. Later that night, it is revealed that Daleth has the body of Sharon in a coffin. One day, Viktor is called to the main mansion, and Viktor is worried about what will happen when he sees his mother after so many years. He plans to tell his mother that he loves Alice, no matter what happens. Before they leave, Rob and the witches wish him luck. And when they arrive, Walter apologizes for telling their mother Viola has been visiting him. When Viktor visits his mother, she ignores him when she hears he hasn't broken the curse yet. Later, Alice is seen and reminds the Duchess of her mother Sharon. And the other maids tell Alice that the Duchess used to be very close to Sharon before she died, and ever since the Duchess has acted strangely. That night, a stressed Viktor almost kisses Alice before he stops himself, and the next day Viola takes him to where he was cursed. The Duchess doesn't approve of Viola with Viktor, and at dinner she tells Viktor that he will no longer be the heir if he does not cure his curse by spring. Viktor tells her that he intends to marry Alice, but the Duchess refuses on the grounds that she is a commoner. Viktor then scolds his mother for treating him and his siblings like playthings, and he leaves, followed by Walter and Viola. Alice waits for him outside to return to the mansion as his siblings wish him luck. And that night, while they play cards, Viktor tells Alice that he loves her. And this is all for this video. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.